Master the art of self-discipline, and you stop depending on motivation. Master the art of self-discipline, and your results stop being random. Master the art of self-discipline, and your identity becomes stable. This video is not about pushing harder. It is about building internal control that does not collapse under mood, pressure, or distraction. Most people think discipline is intensity. It is not. It is structure. Right now, your problem is not that you do not know what to do. You already know. The problem is that your behavior changes based on how you feel. That is where control is lost. By the end of this video, you will understand what self-discipline actually is, why most people misunderstand it, and how to build it as a repeatable internal system, not as emotional effort. This matters because without discipline, your goals stay theoretical. With discipline, your standards become automatic. Today, we are going to break down the exact internal mechanisms that turn discipline from a struggle into an identity. To master the art of self-discipline, you must understand one core truth. Discipline is not about forcing yourself. It is about removing internal negotiation. There are three internal mechanisms that control whether you are disciplined or inconsistent. If you understand these three, discipline stops feeling emotional and starts feeling structural. Here is the framework. 1. Standards control behavior. You do not rise to goals. You fall to standards. If your standards are flexible, your behavior becomes flexible. 2. Structure removes decision fatigue. When everything is optional, everything becomes delayed. Structure reduces thinking. Reduced thinking increases consistency. 3. Identity eliminates negotiation. If you still see discipline as something you try, you will negotiate. When discipline becomes part of who you are, negotiation decreases. That is it. Self-discipline is not about intensity. It is about these three internal shifts. In the next section, we will break down each one clearly. You will see how your daily behavior is controlled by standards, structure, and identity, whether you realize it or not. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let's start with the first mechanism. Your behavior does not reflect your goals. It reflects your standards. You say you want progress, but your standards decide what you tolerate daily. If your standard for work is, "I'll do it when I feel ready," then inconsistency becomes normal. If your standard for health is, "I'll try this week," then delay becomes acceptable. This is where you lose control. Self-discipline begins when standards become non-negotiable. Not extreme. Not dramatic. Clear. For example, if your standard is, "I train 5 days a week no matter what," then mood becomes irrelevant. If your standard is, "I start work at 8 a.m., then emotion has no authority. Notice something important. Discipline is easier when the rule is clear. It becomes difficult when the rule is flexible. You struggle not because you are incapable. You struggle because your standards still allow negotiation. Every time you say, "I'll do it later," you are lowering the standard. And when standards drop, identity weakens. You do not need more motivation. You need fewer flexible rules. Self-discipline starts when your minimum acceptable behavior increases. Not your ambition. Your minimum. When your minimum is strong, your average performance rises automatically. This is the first art of discipline. Raise the standard. Protect it daily. Do not renegotiate it emotionally. Because once standards stabilize, behavior stabilizes. And that is control. Now the second mechanism. Even if your standards are clear, you will still fail if your environment forces you to decide everything every day. Discipline weakens when you must constantly choose. When your routine is undefined, your brain defaults to comfort. This is not weakness. It is cognitive efficiency. If you wake up and think, "When should I start? What should I work on first? How long should I do this?" You are already negotiating. Structure removes this negotiation. Self-discipline is easier when behavior is scheduled, not selected. For example, instead of, "I'll work on my project today," you define 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Deep work. Phone off. Instead of, "I'll try to read more," you define 10 pages before bed. Structure reduces thinking. Reduced thinking increases execution. This is where many people misunderstand discipline. They believe willpower creates consistency. It does not. Clarity creates consistency. When the next action is obvious, resistance decreases. When the next action is unclear, delay increases. You do not fail because you lack strength. You fail because you left space for debate. Structure closes that space. And once that space closes, discipline becomes lighter. Remember the thesis. Discipline is not emotional force. It is removal of internal negotiation. Standards set the rule. Structure enforces the rule. When both exist, your behavior stabilizes. When either is missing, inconsistency returns. Now the third mechanism. Standards define what is acceptable. Structure defines when it happens. But identity decides whether you argue with yourself. If you still see discipline as something you do, you will debate it. When you see discipline as who you are, debate decreases. This is subtle but powerful. If you say, "I'm trying to be disciplined," you are still separate from it. Trying leaves room for exception. But if you say, "I am someone who keeps commitments," now behavior aligns with identity. You protect identity faster than you protect goals. For example, if you identify as a reliable person, you feel discomfort breaking promises. If you identify as consistent, skipping work feels misaligned. This is not motivation. It is self-image preservation. And this is where mastery happens. Because once discipline becomes identity-based, effort reduces. You do not wake up asking, "Do I feel like it?" You wake up knowing, "This is what I do." Notice the shift. Earlier, discipline required energy. Now it requires alignment. You do not push yourself. You act in accordance with who you believe you are. This is why people stay inconsistent for years. Their standards improve. Their structure improves. But their identity stays the same. They still see themselves as sometimes consistent. So they behave accordingly. To master the art of self-discipline, you must update self-image. Not dramatically. Quietly. Start saying, "I don't miss commitments. I finish what I start. I act regardless of mood." Then reinforce it with small proof daily. Identity grows through evidence. And once identity stabilizes, negotiation fades. Remember the core idea. Self-discipline is the removal of internal negotiation. Standards reduce flexibility. Structure reduces decision fatigue. Identity removes debate. When these three align, discipline stops being effort. It becomes normal. Now bring everything together. Mastering the art of self-discipline is not about intensity. It is about internal order. You raise your standards. You build structure. You align identity. And then you protect all three daily. Responsibility is the foundation. No one else manages your standards. No one else builds your structure. No one else protects your identity. When you wait for mood, you lose control. When you wait for clarity from others, you lose ownership. Discipline is personal governance. It is deciding that your word to yourself matters. Self-respect grows when you follow through. Not occasionally. Daily. Even small actions compound. If your minimum standard is maintained for 30 days, momentum builds. If structure stays consistent for 60 days, resistance decreases. If identity is reinforced for 90 days, behavior becomes automatic. This is compounding. Not dramatic transformation. Gradual stabilization. Every day you act according to your standard, you strengthen identity. Every time you protect structure, you reduce future friction. Long-term thinking changes everything. You stop asking, "How do I feel today?" You start asking, "Does this align with who I am becoming?" Mastery is quiet. It does not require hype. It requires repetition. And repetition becomes easier when negotiation disappears. This is the art. Not force. Not emotion. Control. You are not trying to become perfect. You are trying to become consistent. Consistency builds credibility with yourself. And once you trust yourself, discipline stops feeling heavy. It becomes stable. Mastering the art of self-discipline is not dramatic. It is a quiet decision repeated daily. You raise your standard and stop lowering it for comfort. You build structure so decisions do not drain you. You shape your identity so negotiation loses power. Nothing extreme is required. Just consistency. When standards are clear, behavior stabilizes. When structure is fixed, resistance decreases. When identity aligns, discipline becomes natural. This is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming reliable to yourself. And reliability creates control. Control creates progress. Progress builds confidence. Self-discipline is not a talent. It is a system you maintain. Once you understand that, the struggle becomes simpler. You do not chase motivation. You protect structure. You do not argue with mood. You act according to standard. Over time, that quiet repetition changes everything. Discipline stops being effort. It becomes who you are.